What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to 2025 FIDE Grand Swiss tournament that determines 2 of the 8 qualifying candidate tournament spots, which ultimately will decide who is going to challenge the world champion for the crown. So by nature, this is one of the biggest chess events of the year. In today's video, I want to showcase 2 of the brightest stars of Dallas chess scene. So if you're from Dallas, Texas, that's where I reside, rise up. This is our day. First, Jeffrey Xiong, the highest rated Dallas player of all time. He's been 2700 before. And Andy Woodward, the youngest grandmaster in the world, held that record not too long ago. Andy is the hope of Dallas chess, I would say. Also US junior champion. That being said, let us see today's games. First, I want to start with Jeffrey's game, who played 2750 plus players before this. In the first round, he played Prague, number 3 in the world. In round 2, he played Vincent Keimer, also top 10 player, I believe number 9 at the moment in the world. Here, he's playing against Dennis Wagner from Germany, rated at 2608. Jeffrey starts with d4, queen's pawn opening, knight to f6, c4, pawn to e6, and knight c3. We have Nimzo Indian on the board. Bishop to b4 and f3. It is very good to see Jeffrey playing his old pet lines, so to say. I remember days when he used to play very principled lines with white back in Dallas Chess Club days, and some f3, some bishop g5. So it was very good to see that. Now, pawn to c5, black immediately challenges the center. And the idea of f3 is basically to support the center expansion with e4. Okay, and white wants to have this nice center. We'll see now c5 challenges the center. White plays a3, pokes this bishop. And if you do take on c3 after b takes c3, yes, our pawns has been doubled, but the c3 pawn is going to protect the d4 right now. d6, pawn to e4, and white gets the cherished center for which he was okay weakening the pawn structure. Okay, on the queen side. Knight to c6, bishop goes to e3, securing the center here. Then another bishop comes to d3, and black immediately goes to target the c4 pawn. Next, they will want to play bishop a6. Most likely, this is a very standard idea in Nimzo positions to attack the c4 pawn. White continues developing the knight, bishop a6, and short castle. There's a little bit of a tactic here. This pawn cannot be captured because of queen a4 check. Simply double attack, winning the knight. So rook c8 first, and white uses this time to get some pin going. Bishop g5, pawn to h6, bishop retreats back, and Dennis with black decides to go g5. Dennis the menace. Bishop retreats all the way back to e1. Partially, this bishop did its job of initiating the weakness on the king side here. Knight retreats back, and pawn to f4. White is ready to launch some counterplay on the king side. And keep in mind, this knight d7 move blocked the diagonal. So now white loses the pawn on c4. So black takes that pawn, but white says, all right, be my guest. Knight to g3. G takes f4, bishop takes c4. Apparently the first inaccuracy in the game, white would be better off leaving that pawn as it is and go knight h5 and then recapture on f4 with the knight. However, these subtleties here are very minor. Rook captures back on f4, and black returns the favor with pawn to h5. Apparently queen g5 would be strong here, bringing the queen around the king side to help with the defense, basically. On queen f3, there is a wild move here, e5, and rook f7. Black says, all right, you can have that pawn, I'll take the d4 pawn, and potentially trade the queens next. So this rook is not going to pose that much danger. Instead, black plays h5. Now, apparently h4 was a good move here, but queen f3, a very natural looking move to attack the f7 pawn, and black plays now queen to g5. Point is, if rook takes f7, I guess they'll probably play some kind of h4 here, and apparently they just don't mind capturing this pawn. Is there knight e5? Some sort of knight e5, or not really? Let's see. Oh, apparently there's queen f6, so it doesn't work. Because if you take there, then queen here, king d8, queen takes f7, and now white gains the material back with some interest. So instead of taking on f7 here, Jeffrey says, all right, let's gamble. Knight to f5. Pawn takes f5, bishop to h4. I don't need that knight anyways. I wanted to bring the bishop into the attack. Now queen retreats back, pawn takes f5. Because if rook takes f5, black would be able to trade queens, and we know if you have extra material, especially as much as a piece, after trading queens, defensive task is going to be much easier. So white does not want to trade queens. E takes f5, short castle, and Jeffrey is all in. Pawn to g4. C takes d4, pawn to g5. Queen retreats back to h8. Pawn takes d4. Now, computer says that black has everything under control here and is winning due to the material advantage here, almost -2, which is quite a lot at this level. But practically speaking, it is not easy at all. Black has to defend very accurately. Okay. Now, white also has to attack accurately or keep posing problems here. So apparently, rook, instead of rook f e8, there would be other better move like knight d to e5. But rook f e8 looks very natural. Pawn to g6. White wants to open the king up. Queen g7, and suddenly after king h1, we're back on the unclear waters. Black's advantage is not that big anymore because now that queen is going to be locked out. So f6 is another inaccuracy. Instead, apparently knight to e3 would have been better here, I guess limiting white piece's mobility. But f6 is also understandable, and very importantly, you gotta keep in mind Dennis Wagner has 2 minutes left on the clock versus 15 minutes. That's a considerable difference. Okay, so very understandable move here. f6, bishop f2. I'm assuming to cover the e3 square here, and black plays b5. Now rook goes to h4 to attack this h5 pawn. Knight to b6. Rook to d1. I'm assuming Jeffrey wanted to have the rook in the game. Here included. Computer says that taking on h5 immediately would have been better, but okay. Knight b2 attacking the rook, and rook goes to g1. Suddenly, this move is a mistake. Apparently, rook to f1 would have been much better, but I totally understand why white would not want to get in the forking distance here. Apparently, though, white is still good because they have queen d5 check. So knight 6 to c4 doesn't work. What if this knight goes back? Then we'll have to retreat the moves, repeat the moves, I guess. All right, rook to g1. Why is that a mistake? Queen to e7. And now there is no rook h5 because there will be queen e4, again trading the queens. So queen b3 check. Knight goes to c4. Now, after queen e7, let's understand what happened here. Looks like Jeffrey is not quite happy what has happened here. And now he's looking for any kind of resource here to create a chance and keep the attack going because there is no rook h5. So what to do? He goes down to 1 minute from 10 minutes. So his advantage on the clock has dwindled, basically disappeared. And now he is losing again. Apparently knight 6 to c4 was, no, just ignore it. Wow. And if you take here, there is queen b7 check. Apparently rook here, queen f3, and suddenly this queen is dominating the entire position here. I think if queen moves away, there will be rook c1 and back rank checkmate. So threatening also rook e2. White is completely busted. Okay, but knight c4 is understandable. You gotta keep the knight. Rook takes h5, and this check is blocked now with rook g2. With 41 seconds left on the clock, Dennis plays knight d5 within about 4 seconds, as you can see. Okay, or I would say no, down to, so from 41 seconds he went all the way to 7 seconds, because 30 seconds you get an increment. So basically he spent a little over 30 seconds on this move. Knight to d5, which, as you can see, is a blunder. Okay, why is that a blunder? I would highly recommend take your time to figure it out. If you did, congratulations. It is rook to h8. White sacrifices the rook. This tactical motif has the name for sure. Then queen goes to h3, h7 check, f7 checkmate. All right, so you gotta control both sides of the board, or keep both sides of the board in mind, not just one side of the board. Okay, with seconds on the clock here, you gotta feel for the black player. Now he plays king g7, but then rook h7 check, king f8, rook f7 check, queen still gets to h3, and on the next move, queen to h7 is going to be unstoppable. There are few checks here, but simply white will capture everything that gets on the way, and then this bishop clutches the defensive blockade here, and then on the next move, queen will deliver the checkmate. What a win for Jeffrey Xiong. And if you think luck does not exist in chess, I would say this is the clear example that it does. And I'm very happy to see it falling Jeffrey's way. And I'm hoping to see many more exciting games from him in this tournament. Okay, there are 11 rounds. This was only round 3. So now he's 50% after 3 rounds. Next, let's see Andy Woodward, who played Raunak Sedwani from India, who's been 2670 to 80 before. Also a very strong player. In a way, part of that golden Indian generation of prodigies. Okay, Andy is playing with black. And you can see white is about 100 points rating favorite. Andy goes his favorite Najdorf defense of the Sicilian variation. Pawn to e5. So after Raunak chooses to go with bishop e2, and Andy responds with e5. Knight retreats back to b3, bishop e7. Pretty standard way of playing Najdorf. Castles, and rook e1. Another common way of playing this with white would be bishop e3 and going queen d2 and long castle, but Raunak chooses to go short castle instead. Bishop to e6, because the d5 square is usually critical in Najdorf, so this is pretty standard way of developing the bishop here. Bishop goes to f3. White also strengthens the control of the d5 square. Pawn to b5. Very standard for the Sicilian, and especially Najdorf. Black goes for the queenside expansion here with b5. Pawn to e4, that is immediately challenged, and pawn to b4, attacking the knight. Okay, because if takes on a4, that would give white much better pawn structure and open this rook up. So after b4, knight jumps on d5. Black plays a5 to defend the pawn. Pawn to go to c4. Now Andy here decides to bring f knight to d7, because I'm assuming he wants to maybe bring the other knight to c5, but nope, he puts that d knight to c5. Maybe then he's trying to keep this knight on b8 in case it gets knights get traded, other knights get traded on c5. This knight can come to c6 and d4. Okay, white does not take there. Bishop back to g2 and bishop to g5. Andy here decides to trade dark squared bishops, which according to the computer is a mistake. Why is it a mistake now? Apparently knight takes c5, pawn takes c5, and then f4. But white plays immediately f4. Apparently the reason why this is a miss is because now it would be good for black to trade knights first and then move the bishop. But Andy again does not notice the difference here, moves the bishop immediately. And after knight c5, d takes c5, apparently here this pawn transformation is much better for white. What is the reason for that? I think it's because after bishop d5 here, c takes d5, and this knight is never gonna reach d4 square. You have to trade, otherwise your king side pawn structure is gonna get ruined. And after rook to c1 here, you're left with this knight, and white has a better pawn structure here. Probably puts the bishop on b5, then tries to double up on the c file, target this c5 pawn, and it is going to be hard job to set up the resistance here for black, because this defensive squares both are located on the white squares. Okay, so knight may not be able to contribute into defending that c5 pawn. So instead, now after bishop takes d5 here, Raunak takes on h6. What is interesting to see is that on this move f4, white spent almost 30 minutes on the clock. So little by little here, he's getting low on time. He is down to 13 minutes. I'm actually not sure what he was thinking and why that long, but definitely he's probably thinking that he has mismanaged his time, and at this point probably is not feeling very comfortable, especially after bishop h6, because now black is not gonna take on h6. They're gonna take on c4, win this pawn, and keep the king side intact. Okay. After queen g4, there is simply queen f6, and white has nothing. Bishop has to move back, queen moves away to c6. Apparently it would have been better to go to b6. I'm not sure why actually on c6 exactly, but queen goes to c6, and here was the critical moment of the game. After bishop e7, Andy realizes that if he moves the rook here, there's going to be f6, and if g6, now for example rook to d1, one of the rooks, and this knight will be cut off the game, and white only needs a few moves here to checkmate the black king. All right, so knight to d7, positional exchange sacrifice to gain the full control of the important squares in the position. What are those important squares? First of all, the king side security. So f6. Okay, from the defensive perspective, f6 is a very important square. Black has the full control of that, right? Now he retreats the bishop back because he wants to get his queenside pawn majority going. Next c4, now knight comes to f6. I was thinking maybe knight c5, d3, but knight is needed on the king side for now. Kicks the rook away. There's no rook a5 because there would be check and winning the rook, so rook has to go back. Then bishop to b7, now putting the pressure on this pawn on e4, and after queen e3, knight gets in the game to kick the queen away from this diagonal. Then pawn to c3, queen e2 is a mistake apparently. Now why is that a mistake? Queen e1 would be better, because probably the difference is very subtle there. Pawn to c3, and after b takes c3, b takes c3, rook has to move away. Queen to b6 check, king h1, knight to e3. Look at all the black pieces. Okay, all the initiative is right now in black's hand. Okay, this pawn is a passer, and all their pieces are menacing. Okay, now white is begging for the queen trade here with queen b5. No, no, no. Queen c7. Rook to e2 to attack the rook. Knight takes g2. Let's get rid of that defensive bishop. It is not about what leaves the board, but what remains. Okay, so yes, that knight was a good knight, and that bishop was not a very active bishop, but that was a good defensive bishop. Okay, now king and especially light squares are going to be exposed here. Rook b8 immediately would have been very strong, but bishop c6 was played here. Queen returns back to c4, and suddenly white is back in the game here. Rook b8 would be a very important detail apparently, because now queen has to retreat to get away from this discovered threat, and then rook d8 with the idea of bringing this rook to d4, maybe not immediately, but h6 first and then rook d4, applying the pressure on that e4 pawn and winning it. After bishop c6, queen c4, we also gotta look at Sedwani's very impressive time management. He played the last couple of moves very fast, and now they are even on time. So rook said you still cannot touch that pawn because of bishop e4. So now Lennart here decides to move the king away from the danger. But is that safe? Well, queen is hinting towards the h6 square here, and with 1 minute left on the clock, Lennart blundered, queen takes c3. Looks natural, but after queen h6 check, king is forced to go to g4, because if it goes back to g2, bishop e4 discovered attack, rook takes e4, rook takes the queen, and after king g4, a very simple but also simple to overlook move, pawn to g6, threatening queen h5 checkmate on the next move. Decides the game, because if king again goes back, there will be discovered check, winning the queen. Okay, so after g6, right before move 40. For the context, game 1 hour and 40 minutes for 40 moves, and then after 40 moves, players get additional 30 minutes. Okay, so right before white got their additional 30 minutes on the clock, they blundered and lost the game. That's why move 40 is considered to be the heaviest blunder move, I would say. A lot of blunders happen on move 39 and 40, okay, in professional chess. All right, those are the 2 games that I had for this particular video. I'm hoping to record some more, because a lot of fascinating battles are heating up in this tournament. Probably one of my favorite tournaments to observe and watch. So I'll see you in the next one. Let me know which game is your favorite so far in this tournament. That being said, let's wish our boys best of luck in the remainder of the games. And we are hoping to see many more exciting games. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the good things, and I will see you in the next one.